Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unit 6 project lesson. So first, as always, even though it's a project day, we're going to do the pop code for the do now. Basically, what you have to do is there's a joke here. It's not a very good joke, but it's a joke. And what you wanted to make happen is write the jQuery that will make the div with the class of joke answer appear when the p tag with the class of joke question is double clicked. Okay. So in the JavaScript panel, write this out so that when you double click this question, the answer to the joke will appear. Okay. So take some time to do this. And when you're done, you can unpause this video and we can go over the answer together. All right, we're back. I hope you're unpaused at this point. Or if you are unpaused at this point, I hope you laughed at the joke, although it's understandable if you didn't. So let's practice this code. So it says here that we want it to be so that when we double click the p tag with the classic joke question, the div with the classic joke answer appears. So the first thing I'm thinking of when I make a click handler is, what is it that I'm clicking on? Because we know that first line is what you as the user are doing, okay? And what we're clicking on is the p tag, or double clicking on, is the p tag with the classic joke question. So when I'm writing my first line, let me just make sure that jQuery is turned on. When I'm writing my first line, I'm gonna start with my $sign to show that I'm using jQuery. And my first selector is going to be the p tag with the class of joke question. Oh, I forgot my period because it's a class. Okay, because that's what I'm double clicking on in order to make the joke answer appear. Okay, so I'm going to put dbl click because that's how I write double click in jQuery, and I'm going to add the other syntax here that I need to add. I also like to close things in the beginning so I don't forget at the end and I don't get an error message. Okay, once again, highly encourage you if you're forgetting certain things, like where does like the parentheses go or the curly brackets go, look at old pop codes or look at the reference table. Okay, so I want it to be so that when I double click this, that the answer to the joke appears. So the first line is what I'm doing as a user, and that's double click. The second line is what the computer is going to do. So the computer is going to show me the joke when it's double clicked. The joke, as the directions tell us, is in a div with the class of joke answer. So that's going to be my selector on the second line. Joke answer. So that's what I want to appear. Now I need to think, okay, what's my jQuery action that I'm going to use to make the joke appear? I can keep it simple because the answer is already up there. It's in this div. So how about I just put show? I want it to appear. Simple enough. You could do slide down, you could do fade in, you could do either, but I'm just gonna do show. Okay. And let's see if this works. So you know why you never see elephants hiding up in trees? Let's double click. Oh, there's a picture of an elephant in a tree because they're really good at it. Ah, okay, you don't have to laugh. But yes, there we go. That is ready now. So today, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, is a really special day because it is the project day. We're going to use all that we learned about jQuery throughout this unit to build an interactive website. And the vocabulary that we need to really zero in today on is align, parent element, child elements, flexbox. Actually, that's not true. That's not vocabulary, but you'll see some vocabulary as we go through this lesson. Okay, in Unit 6, here are all the things that we've learned. We've learned to use jQuery to select specific elements on the page. You've used jQuery to show and hide an element on the page. You've used jQuery to take one or more arguments, including .text and .css, and you use jQuery to write event handlers that respond when a user does something. You've done so much, and we're going to put this together all to build an interactive choose your own adventure game, right? So you're going to have your user go through an adventure, okay, that they're going to interact with, and based on what they say, it's going to change the outcome of their adventure. So you might have remembered this example from way back in lesson 6.1, but let's just look at an example of what this could look like. So this amazing example is a Animal Crossing choose your own adventure, okay? So let's just read through it. So it says in the first page, Isabel, the helper of the town, approaches you. You've been selected as mayor of such little town, and she always comes to you when she needs help. Hello, mayor. I need your help finding a bag of bells, which are money. Would you be kind enough to help? We need to buy more fruits for the town festival. So, should we accept the request or should we not accept the request? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking. You can't answer me. I'm going to accept the request because I'm a nice person. So let me accept. Okay. Then it says you come across a tree, it has a newly grown apples, shake the tree by double clicking. So we already see here, there's a couple things that this student has done in jQuery that has learned jQuery that they've added to this project, right? We see the double click event, okay? And that did something, it changed the page based on our double click. It says a nice clean apple has fallen from the tree. Click on the apple to pick it up. Once again, we have another event. When I click on the apple, another page comes up, right? Uh-oh, it seems Bob wants your apple in exchange for an unknown reward. Will you give him the apple to Bob? No, I just went through all the trouble getting the apple. I'm keeping it. And then it says, even though Bob can only smile, you can see his disappointment. Bob wants to give you something. Click on Bob to get it. The image isn't showing up, but there should be a picture of Bob here, okay? And it says, Bob is giving you a bug net. There seems to be something inside. Low humming can be heard from within. Click on the net search. Uh-oh. Click on the net. Oh, you actually had to double click. Bob is giving you bees trying to say that was really shady of Bob to just like give me bees because I didn't want to give him my hard-earned food, but you know, whatever. So we've seen this example, right? There's tons of events. There's double clicking, there's clicking, right? And when we've done those things, it's changed the page. So just like all the things that we've done in jQuery so far, they're putting it to use in this website. When the user does something, in this case, click, the page will change. What's on the page will change, okay? And that's based on what we've done and it changes. Something shows, something hides, okay? So this is an example of a kind of project that we can do. There's another example here, if you want to check this out by looking at the slides, of like a basketball game, okay, between two teams. That's also choose your own adventure, but that's what we're going to do. It's going to be a really good opportunity for you to not only be creative, but opportunity to put all that we've learned about jQuery into action. Okay, so let's look at the project rubric. We know that when visitors come to our website, they want to be able to change the adventure based on their personal choices, right? If I went back to that website and I chose different choices, there would have been different outcomes, right? You can go test it out yourself. Like if I had chosen not to, if I had chosen to get the apple to Bob, there would have been a different outcome, right? So one thing we need to make sure is that it's interactive. That's what jQuery allows us to do. And in order to do this, you need to write multiple event handlers that allow the page response when a user interacts with it. This means that you're going to need to make multiple different outcomes in jQuery using HTML and CSS2 to help you out with that. Visitors also are going to want the elements of the web page to appear and disappear as they click through their adventure. You notice in the example I showed you, once I clicked the choice, I didn't see the old question, right? I saw a new screen. So in order to do this, you need to use multiple jQuery actions such as .show, .hide, .fade, .slide, and or toggle, right? You need to use a combination of these different elements so that it's not just like one long web page with tons of different questions. It changes the screen every time I make a choice. Okay. Visitors want the text, images, and look of the web page to change as they click through the adventure. Okay. So we need to make sure that we change the text and change the CSS. And they did that in that example when the text changed every time I clicked the choice and there were different pictures. They used .text and .css for that. And the visitors want to be able to interact with the web page in a number of different ways, not just clicking, right? So that user or that student had clicking and double clicking. You can add other things. You can add hover, you can add mouse enter, you can add mouse leave, right? But the idea is that it should not just be clicking all throughout. There should be different events. And then finally, visitors don't want to know the end of the story until they have finished the entire adventure, because that would kill the whole story, right? This means that you need to use .show or .hide and or display none in CSS to make objects appear and disappear. We're going to go over that display none in this lesson now, but the idea is that at the beginning of the adventure, I shouldn't know all the outcomes. It should be hidden until I finish it. And there are a number of ways in jQuery and CSS that I can do this. Okay, so what do I already know? What do I need to make this website? So we know in JavaScript, I need at least 3 event handlers, right? We want 3 handlers to finish the story, or 3 events before the story is done, minimum. And I need jQuery to show and hide elements, toggle, slide, fade elements. I also need jQuery to change the text and change the CSS. Of course, there's stuff in HTML that I might potentially need. I might need some H1s. I might need some P tags, some button tags, some image tags, definitely the image tags and P tags so that I can actually help tell the story, okay? So this is really a combo of, yes, JavaScript is the core of this project because that's what we've been going over this unit, but you're gonna need to pull back what you know from HTML and CSS in order to make it a really creative project that pops and is interesting for the user to use. All right. So because we're telling a story, we need to plan out the story. So what I want you to do right now is go to your project plan. I can pull it up. Project plan, let me move this toolbar. Okay, go to the project plan and answer these questions here in order to plan out your story, right? So you want to think about, what is your adventure going to be about? What's going to happen at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the adventure? How many user events, so click, double click, etc., will it take to finish my adventure? And how many times will the user be given the chance to change the outcome of the adventure? So really important, actually, this part right here, okay? You need at least 3 events to happen. So your story needs to have at least minimum 3 parts, okay? Like a first screen, a second screen, and a third screen. Like I clicked once, I double clicked twice, I double clicked once, and I hovered once, okay? And you also need to give the user at least one time where they can change the outcome of the story. In the example I showed you, that student gave us multiple chances to change the outcome of the story, but you only need at least one time where you say like, do you want to do this or you want to do this, okay? But you need 3 events minimum, you can have more, and at least one option to change the story's outcome, but you can have more than one. So take some time to pause the video now and flesh out your story in the project plan. And then when you're done, you can unpause and we can go on to the next step. All right, I'm assuming you've unpaused right now, and hopefully you have a really cool story that you're going to tell, a really fun experience for users. Let's move on to the next step so we can continue working on this project. So our project, as you might have already noticed, this project is more advanced, more next level than the projects we did in units from 1 to 5, okay? That means that we're going to need to practice or learn a skill and practice a skill that a lot of computer programmers use or software engineers use, etc. And that is called writing pseudocode, okay? And that's gonna really help you plan this project. So you might be thinking, pseudocode, what's that? Okay, pseudocode is an informal way to represent a simpler version of code. So the word pseudo means fake, means not real, okay? Like you might have heard the term like pseudoscience. Pseudoscience means it's not real science, okay? And the idea is that pseudocode is you writing out the code basically more or less in plain English or in simpler terms before you've written the actual code. And the idea is that it's easier for humans to read that. And because it's easier to read, it's easier for you to build. And it's a really important part of the planning process because you remember like when you wireframed websites, right? You had the structure before you did it. This is the same thing. Pseudocode helps you break down what you're going to be doing for this choose your own adventure into simple English so that you know all the steps and all the things that you want to happen, okay? And there are 3 steps to writing pseudocode. The first step is I need to identify the problem. What do I want to happen? So let's say I want, at some point in my choose your own adventure, I want the dog picture to disappear when I click on a button. That's the first thing you need to identify. What is the problem that I want to solve? Then, second step, you translate that into pseudocode, which I'll show you how to write in a second. And then thirdly, you translate it, and this is the last thing, which will be done in the actual pop code. You translate it into the actual code. So pseudocode, all this is a way to plan out what you're doing before you do it. Because as you do more advanced projects, It's much harder to just like be like, all right, open up the pop quote, let's go, right? You need to plan it out. And that's what pseudocode helps you do. All right, so let's look at some examples of pseudocode. So let's say my problem is that I want a dog picture to disappear when I click on the button. That's step one, I've identified that problem. Step two, if we look here, here is how I would write the pseudocode in each different language that we've learned. In HTML, I might just put image, dog, and button, right? Because I know I want those two things in my HTML, but I don't have, say, the dog picture yet. CSS, I would just put image width 200 because I know I want the image to be 200 pixels, but I just haven't coded that yet. And then the JavaScript, here's the money here. I would just write out in plain English what it is that I want to happen. And that is when I click up on a button, hide the dog image. So see, this is pseudocode, it's fake code. This isn't actual code yet, but it's the instructions I'll use to follow when I'm actually coding. And that's that last step there. One thing that you might want to do, you don't have to do this for this project, but it is a helpful skill to get into the habit of learning, is when you're starting to write the code, to comment things out and then add the code and then erase the comments. I'm going to show you an example, but all of these things, or all of these are examples of commenting out the code in the different languages. And it can be very useful when you're planning something out and you want to make sure that you have all the steps correct. So let me just show you very quickly what this can look like. So let's say I want to have all my steps written in the JavaScript before I go and start coding things. I want it all through my pop code before I start coding things. And I want this part, when I click on a button, hide the dog image, to be there, so know that that's what I need to code. So let me just write that. When I click on the button, hide the dog image. Okay, in JavaScript. So if I wrote that, when I click on a button, hide the dog image. Okay, you see how I'm getting an error message there? It might be helpful to have this here because that will like allow me to remember what I need to write in code, but I don't want that error message there. So I'm just gonna comment this out. Okay, and you see there's no error message anymore. And then maybe when I'm going back to this, I can actually start writing the code like, okay, button, you know, I write the actual code here underneath here, but this is helpful because it just gives me a sense of what I'm going to need to do later when I go back to the project. I could write out all the steps of my story in JavaScript just by commenting it out and writing, and then add the code under it. And then when I'm done writing the code, I can just erase the comments and be good to go, okay? So that's one thing that you can do to help you organize this project, is write that. But regardless of if you do that or not for this project, you're definitely going to have to write the pseudocode to help you plan it out, okay? And here is just an example of translating the pseudocode into actual code, right? Like the JavaScript, when I click on a button, hide the dog image, well, here on the bottom, you see what it would actually look like when I do the final step, which is writing it in code. Okay, and I just want to show you what this can look like when you plan out your stories. So in the example, we went, the Animal Crossing example, step one was they gave us this introductory stuff, and then the event in pseudocode would be the user clicks yes or no after reading the introductory info, okay? And then the outcome would be new text appears in the body that says shake the tree by double clicking it to get an apple. That's one outcome, right? If I say yes, then that tree is going to appear. But, and we didn't do this when we did the example, but if you say no, right? The outcome will be that new text appears in the body that says, oh no, you've made Isabel upset. So when you're planning out your pseudocode, just plan out each step of what's going to happen in the story, write it in plain English, and then later you're going to translate that into actual code. But this planning step is going to make that translation much easier. Okay. So what I want you all to do right now is plan out your pseudocode. So go into your project planning plan, project plan, and here's the pseudocode part. Write out the pseudocode. Remember, you only need 3 steps to your story. That's why 4 and 5 are optional. But write out each step. So what's going to happen? What's the first event that's going to happen? If they say yes, what's the outcome going to be? If they say no, because there's an option to say no, what's the outcome going to be? And use this time to plan out your steps so that when you start your pop code for your choose your own adventure, you know exactly what you have to code. And you're basically just reading off this and translating it into jQuery. Okay. So take some time to do this. Pause the video now and take some time to do this in your project plan. And then come back when you're ready. There's one thing I want to show you for day one of this project. Okay, I've seen that you have unpaused. So now what we're going to do is talk about one more thing. Now you may have thought as you were writing your pseudocode, hey, wait a minute, I have a lot of steps. How am I going to have them all hidden and have them only change when the user clicks or hovers over something, etc.? Okay. And the way that you do that is, well, there's two ways. One way you can do it is using jQuery.hide. But another way that you can hide something so that's not shown in the beginning is by using display none in CSS. So let's look at an example of this. Okay, so we see here that we have two logos. We have Dos Toros and Taco Bell. You might have a preference between those two. Oh, sorry, we have three, and Chipotle. But you know, they're all good for depending on what you want. Okay, the point is though, is that we're trying to use CSS and jQuery, one or the other, to hide these logos um, when you first go into the website, okay? Because that's something that you're going to need to do for your story. You don't want to show them the end when they first go into your website. You want them to have to click to the end. So you're going to need to hide all the other text, okay? So let's practice that. So one way we can do that is using CSS. So how about we use CSS to hide your least preferred food spot? Okay. The least preferred one for me is Taco Bell. I just think it tastes like the worst of these three. You know, you can have different opinions. That's okay. So I'm going to hide it now. Okay, using CSS. So for how I would do this is I would go find the class of the Taco Bell logo, which I see here on line 9 is taco is the class. Okay, and I'm going to do what I would normally do in CSS. You know, okay? And now the property I'm going to use is called display. And the value I'm going to use is called none. And you notice now that the Taco Bell logo is no longer there because I did that, okay? I put display none in CSS and not got rid of it. If I wanted to get rid of the Chipotle one in CSS, let's see. The class for the Chipotle picture is Chipotle, so just put dot Chipotle. It's still there because I haven't done this. And now put properties display and the value is none. Okay, you see the Chipotle logo is gone. Okay, so that's one way I can hide things, and I can hide as many things as I want this way. But let's say I wanted to hide something using jQuery. I can also do that doing jQuery. So all I would do, and let me make sure that jQuery is turned on here. Okay, it's not. Let me turn on jQuery. Okay, all I would do in order to hide something with jQuery is I would use the dot hide action, okay? I don't need to make a whole click handler with a button because there's no buttons here, but I can just use dot hide. So let's say my second least favorite here is Dos Toros because I just haven't eaten there a lot. So let me put that. What's the class for Dos Toros? Dos Toros, okay? Gonna put class, and I put the $sign to turn jQuery on. I'm just gonna put dot hide. And then as you see, there's no Dos Toros logo, okay? So I would just put that, I can hide it either way. I can use the display none in CSS, or I can use dot hide in JavaScript. The one thing I will say about using the jQuery way is that you have to make sure that that is outside of a click function, so that otherwise, once you click buttons, it's going to show up, okay? But these are two ways to hide things so that the ending of your story is not given away by the time that you reach when the user just goes into your website. All right, and with that said, The main thing today was to write your pseudocode. So if you're done with that, you can get to coding. Just start opening up a pop code and use your pseudocode to help you start planning out your adventure. And right now you can pause the video and then come back to here later, or come to this video later, or tomorrow, and see what you should get done for day 2 of the project. But you're done for today, and you can pause the video now or come back tomorrow, and we'll go over day 2. All right, we're on day 2. I'm assuming you've unpaused. So uh, now that you've written your pseudocode and you have your story planned out, it's really time to dig into the code. So yesterday, we planned our projects by brainstorming around our pseudocode, and we learned display none or dot hide to hide the ending of our story before it happens. By the end of today, what you should have done is you should follow your pseudocode to create the HTML elements and style them in CSS and hide by using display none in CSS. And the other thing that you should have done is you should begin creating the event handlers you'll need. Make sure to include different kinds of events, click, double click, hover, etc., and actions. So like fade, slide, show, etc. Okay. So get to it. Open up a pop code. I would do step 1 first. Just put all the things that you want to put in your story, put them out in the HTML. Okay. And then once you're finished with that, then you can start thinking about, okay, I'm going to have the user click this and have this event happen, et cetera, but just put everything on HTML first. Okay. That's what you have to do for day 2. You can pause the video right now and work on that and come back when you're ready for day 3 instructions. Okay, it is day 3 and we are at the final step of this project. So at this point, you have all your elements of your story out in HTML, you've hidden certain things in CSS, and you maybe have started your event handlers, okay? Or your click handlers. Now what we're going to do for this final finishing touches is you want to make sure that we finish all the event handlers needed for your adventure and do a run through just to make sure it works properly. And then once you've done that run through and everything's working how it should work, submit your project, okay? That's really key. Make sure that you save your pop code, make sure that you signed into your pop code so all your work is saved, and then you submit your project. If you finish and you just want an extra challenge, one thing that you can do is add a delay that makes the different parts of the story appear or disappear after 5 seconds without clicking a button, okay? That sounds like it might be difficult, but if you Google it, you can find a way to make it so that when the user clicks or hovers over a button, etc., that there's a 5-second delay before the next thing appears. Very cool. And with that, you're done with the project. Very nicely done. I'm really excited. I hope I can see a lot of different kinds of projects and do all your choose your adventures. And yeah, with that, you're done with unit 6. Oh, it's such a journey, but this is your first JavaScript unit, okay? Your first introduction to an actual programming language. And I'm sure you all did a fantastic job. And we'll see you all in unit 7. Goodbye.